Well, welcome to Enablement Uncanned, everyone. Today we have Dave Sweeney. Hi, Dave. How are we?
Hello, doing good, thank you. Doing good.
Excellent. As you can hear from Dave's accent, he is from Scotland, Glasgow, and we've just found out pre-podcast that he's likely sat in the same office that my team is sat in. Isn't that right? So
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, that's what Google tells us. I also just want to get this in there. The further south you go in the UK, the more Scottish people think I sound. This is an English accent as far as Glasgow is concerned. So when people say that, it makes me happier than it should, but it does. So
you're right, and I can actually understand you as well, Dave, which says it all, right? Because usually, someone
that
from
is
a
the
deep
stereotype, right?
Glasgow accent, yeah, I wouldn't actually understand. But yeah, Dave, you're the VP of growth at the Enablement Squad, which we know
Mhm.
very, very well, and Enablement exec at Leighton as well, and known, I
Yes.
guess, for pushing back a little bit at the status quo in sales enablement, which is a good thing to have,
Yeah,
maybe if we want to be a little bit
sort
edgy. But
of.
you've got a strong career in enablement, building teams, critical thinking, inclusive communication, and that real connection that you're building. Give us a bit of an intro, Dave, to the listeners that what you do and
Yeah.
what you're good at.
Well, so yeah, I've been officially in enablement now for 5 years. Always part of my sales career. I think, before enablement was enablement, new joiner
Hmm.
comes into the business. Dave will show you how to use that. Um, Kind of was the role I built almost for myself, a number of sales roles over the years. Um, but yeah, for me, 10 years in sales before switching over to enablement, that kind of buzz that you're meant to get from closing a deal, it was always bigger for me when the person sat next to me who I helped got theirs, which was strange. Is why I do what I do now. So, yeah, I think one of the things I like to focus on is practical and actionable enablement. I think
Hmm.
as a person, I can be quite guilty of getting too into detail, thinking too hard about content, whereas actually, there's a line which I stole from a previous colleague, who was the marketing lead at a business I worked at a few years ago, who said done is better than perfect to me on about 20 million different occasions when I was doing some content. And it just is in my head now, forever. And I think particularly when you're dealing with sellers who just want something actionable that they can go and do, that's the kind of mantra I have to say to myself internally every day because it doesn't come naturally, let's say.
You know what? I
So yeah,
actually need to tell myself that a lot more.
it works.
You're not wrong. Yeah, because
Yeah,
I'm a perfectionist. Even when it comes to changing little logos on slides, whatever it might be, that when you're in a presentation, no one's really going to notice.
yes,
So I hear you.
yes. So I don't know if you're listening, Claire, but yeah, that's from us. That is better than
There you
perfect.
go. There you go. No, I like that, and that done is better than perfect in a lot of sense, particularly in
Mm,
both of our industries, right? Both of our sectors, both in sales and
yeah,
enablement. Um,
absolutely.
Give us your, and we always start the podcast with this, right? We start it with an uncanned, kind of a bit of an edgy take on things. And I mean, the title
Mhm.
of this podcast is pretty edgy anyway, and we're going to talk about AI in
Yep.
sales and potentially how AI is actually ruining sales as well. Give us your uncanned opinion on that.
Oh, now we're talking. Okay, your words, not mine, by the way, but I agree. No, I think let me caveat that. I think it is in at risk of ruining what we work so hard to build
Hmm.
because of how it is being used. And I think there's two kind of different kind of trends or paths you could look at here. The first is what have we learned from over the last 5 or 6 years in sales? If you think of the boom of sales engagement platforms, Outreach, SalesLoft, Apollo to a lesser degree, um, they enabled us to basically automate.
Hmm.
And what happened, particularly because that boom also coincided with COVID, where reaching people on the phone became harder than ever before. We were all working remotely, our decision makers were working remotely. Suddenly, and for a brief period, sending the same email to 1,000 people with the same job title worked. That period was very, very brief, but because it
Yeah.
worked, we kept doing it, and I'm as guilty as anyone. I was
Hmm.
transitioning from sales into enablement at that point. And I think a lot of us have since learned the lesson that that is not the way to go about things, right? But we are still in that sort of spray and pray territory.
Hmm.
I get emails all the time. So, for example, it was January this year where I officially moved over into the role as VP of Growth at the Enablement Squad. And as soon as I added that job title to my LinkedIn page, the amount of nonsense I get in my Enablement Squad emails is unbelievable from people who've just clearly not looked at the Enablement Squad and gone, oh, this is a voluntarily run
Hmm.
Slack community for enablers. It is not a company I can sell an LMS to or lead gen, which is the irony. It's always lead gen companies. But we're still in that and learning from those mistakes. My concern with AI is that it is helping us double down and exacerbating the problems that that level of automation and one size fits all approach created,
Hmm.
rather than us actually using it to be better.
Hmm.
I sort of don't want AI to do my job for me. I want AI to make me better at my job.
Yeah, that's bang on.
And
That's bang on.
this, thanks. And the second, I suppose, strain from that, I think, is the biggest challenge potentially, is that we're all learning AI at the same time.
Hmm.
So if you're talking about how to build a best practice cold outreach cadence, if you're talking to someone about how do you follow up, to close a deal, how do you make sure there's urgency there? How do you pin them down finally to sign that contract? Most of the time, the people enabling, coaching, training, helping people do that have done it before. There's a tried and tested path there, whether you're in enablement, whether you're their manager, peer to peer coaching, whatever it is, there is a path that they can follow. Problem is with AI, the people that are meant to be doing the enablement and the coaching are learning it at the same time as the people they are coaching. Myself included, I am far from an expert when it comes to these things. I
Hmm.
look to others in the enablement world who talk about this stuff to learn from. Um, but it's this kind of almost, I don't know necessarily how we solve that because we are using it wrong and we're using it in a way that exacerbates problems that exist already.
Hmm.
But we're all learning how to do it better at the same time.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's almost like icing a cake without building the cake in the first place. To try and really simplify it, right? Because
Yeah.
if you put AI on a broken strategy or a broken go-to-market function,
Mhm.
um, you are completely just elevating that crap, if you will, to be
Yeah.
bluntly, right?
Yeah.
It's
The
not
way I
like
would,
yeah, you're right.
yeah. I mean, the best example for me is with AI generated content and writing.
Hmm.
So if you take email as an example, whether you're using inbuilt AI tools in your, tech stack, or whether it's ChatGPT or whatever, it's got to the point now where it can write something pretty decent. The
Hmm.
problem is not the quality, it is the seller's ability to vet whether that quality is there if they haven't learned how to do that themselves. But even more than that, it's speeding up the problem that you get when you build a template that you use a million times yourself. Because if you've written your own template, by the time you've sent that to 100 people and edited the little bits you need to edit, you no longer know what it says. You're copying and
Hmm.
pasting. So you're not close enough to the words you are sending to your prospects. So you don't know what you sent them. And that level of kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of removal from the communication we're actually having with people, I think is a big part of the reason why no one engages with that type of written communication in sales now the way they did, 5, 6 plus years ago. AI sped
Yeah.
that up. If AI writes something for you, you don't know what it says really. You can read it once, but
No,
then
of
you just
course you
send
don't.
it.
Yeah.
You've removed, you're detached from the content, from the communication, from the actual conversation that you are trying to have or continue.
Yeah. You're diluting that real connection, and this is, one of the
Yeah.
biggest issues that a lot of the events that you and I go to on a regular basis that we've been talking about in the last few weeks, last few months. And I guess
Mhm.
that's the role of enablement is to kind of step in and act as that sort of that ethical filter, if you will, when it comes to tech adoption, when it comes to AI adoption, to actually try and keep that gap real. And use AI for the real things that you actually need to use it for, because it's not like it's going to ruin it completely, but it will if you use it for the wrong things.
Yeah. And I think some of that is about monitoring adoption, but also
Hmm.
understanding that AI is kind of ubiquitous now. If you don't have AI processes, tools, tech stack in your own approach as a sales function, I guarantee your sellers are using it, whether
Oh, without a
you're
doubt.
kind of monitoring that process or not. And that's what's scary
Hmm.
about it, is because it's become ubiquitous. It's just the thing people use, especially those that are younger. You know, I'm getting on a bit, so trying to remain close enough to what somebody who's 2021 and breaking into sales is using day to day. It's not the same as it was when I did that. The tech
No.
stack was what I used because it's all I had.
Hmm.
That's not the
Hmm.
case anymore. So there's a ubiquity to it that I think the most kind of rigid process will not help you, manage. Um, so they're using it whether you want them to or not.
We were talking about it before we came on, right? I was success, and I don't want to big myself up here, but we were successful at what we did prior to AI.
Mhm.
You know, almost maybe the same, maybe even slightly better. It's difficult to know. It's difficult to actually put that in, and this is it, isn't it? Is the more tools, better performance myth is completely rampant.
Yep.
But like you're saying, it creates more clutter than actually clarity, particularly with the AI layer on that. And it can
Mhm.
tank trust. I think that's the biggest thing we're talking about here, is if you are doing the same thing over and over again and you're not really reading the messages, and you're distancing yourself from that connectivity, it is going to tank that trust that we do so
Yep.
well as salespeople, because obviously you've had sales experience building, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I would argue that trust and credibility are the two most important things for any seller
Yeah.
to try and build. It always have been, but I think more so now than anywhere else or at any other time. Because if you think about it, because of the growth in things like AI, that conversation we've been having over the last 10 years or so about the buyer process changing because information is so much more readily available is
Hmm.
more true now than ever before. So if a buyer does not trust you and believe you to be credible, they're not buying from you because you're
No.
almost there to help them vet the information they've already got. If you can
Hmm.
teach them something they didn't know, brilliant. But that's harder now than it was 10 years ago
Oh,
because
without a
all the
doubt.
information's there. They just want to know which bit of information to believe and which bit not to.
So true. 95% of the buying decision is made before they speak to a salesperson. 95%. And
Yeah.
do you know what? It was another podcast I was on a few months back with somebody else, one of our customers, that was saying that's only going to get closer to the 100 because of things like AI generated stuff on Google, them giving you an answer, and all this kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Which is scary because it it
Yeah.
reduces the time that you and I have with buyers, to
Mhm.
actually build that trust and build that connectivity that we long for, right? In sales. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It's why you need to ask the right questions. This
yeah, yeah.
is it's become a bit of a bit of a cliche now, but everything is about discovery in sales.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
what people hear when you say that is ask a million questions. No, ask the right questions. And that is, I
Hmm.
think, the mindset flip that sales is having at the moment and enablement is having to, support with. Because people can't be interrogated. They should never have been doing that interrogative approach anyway, even when I was in sales, but it kind of worked for a while, that kind of, list of discovery qualification questions, whatever methodology you were using, became, well, I need to ask all these questions to get the information I want. No. But I think
Hmm.
it's all part of the same kind of issue I think we have, whether it's AI, whether it's sales methodologies, whatever it is, with trying to get more from less.
Hmm.
And this whole less is more mantra. which is pervading, I think, pretty much everything without getting too outside of our world and into the realm of the social and the political. Um, doing more with less is the world is obsessed with it at the moment.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and there's a ceiling to it, and less eventually becomes unsustainable.
For sure.
And then what's the backup?
Difficult. Yeah, what is the backup? You mentioned methodologies there, and I was going to ask you about your sales experience, but well, in fact, no, I'll ask you about that now because it was
Okay.
we mentioned it prior, and it's definitely a topic that has been in the top 10 topics I've been dealing with over the last few weeks, particularly at these events. Do you need sales experience to be an enabler?
I want to say no. In reality, I think the answer is closer to yes.
Oof.
But I don't think it's absolute. I think it
Mm-hmm.
very much depends on your role in enablement. So I was in sales for 10 years, right, before I made the switch. And I was okay. I was average. Did better in some places, worse in others. I frankly think I'm better at this job than I was as a seller. But my understanding of what it is like as a seller helps and enables me to be a good enabler.
Yeah.
So I was an SDR for a very, very short period, and then I spent most of that 10 years as a full cycle seller or account manager. So that experience I have of a full cycle and then also customer success at the end of that is gold as far as my current job is concerned, right? Do I
Mm-hmm.
think it's necessary? No. Do I think it makes me ramp faster if I switch to a new company as I did when I joined Leighton in 2023? Yes. And it's that credibility thing again. It's kind of like sales. What we do in enablement is all about discovery as well, trying to
Mm-hmm.
get to the bottom of things. Um, I don't remember the last time I had an onboarding cohort, which I have every single month, where at least one of them didn't ask me when the last time I made a cold call was. Imagine if I couldn't answer that question.
That's an
Imagine the
amazing
credibility
question.
I would lose.
Yeah, you'd lose the room in one go. Honestly,
Exactly.
it would disappear.
Yeah. And the correct answer, if I'm talking a day-to-day sales job, is over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The answer I give them is, well, actually, I do a lot of stuff with the enablement squad to kind of seek out content partners and webinar speakers. So I'm doing lots of outreach. It's not cold calls in that sense because it's usually people that know me, but I've got my foot in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I did it for 10 years. So if I couldn't say that, would my credibility with the individual that asked that question drop? Yes. However, if you're not in a facilitator or coaching role and you're more in the content management, instructional design, kind of borderline RevOps kind of space, then no, probably not. But if you are day to day interacting with sellers, whether it's training, coaching, whatever it is, I, I I want to say you don't have to, but
Mm-hmm.
the help that it provides is immeasurable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just speaking from my own experience.
And the fact that you got asked that question means that you didn't do any sales experience.
Well,
In every
yeah,
onboarding. Yes. I
I
mean, you
don't
could
remember the
lie.
last time they didn't. I could, but I honestly don't
Yeah.
remember the last time one of them didn't ask me.
Do you know what? That is so interesting. It's so interesting because I mean, I could answer it, and it was a long, long time ago for sure.
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't that long time ago because I would say I'm leaning on the two SDRs that I have actually doing a lot of that, legwork for me, I guess. But
Yeah.
if I need to make a cold call, I will, and I can, for sure.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess it's that credibility piece, going back to the trust piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people will agree with you on that, I think. But there has been, I've asked every single person in the last few months, especially on these podcasts, and it's been right down the middle. No one can really decide whether it's important or not. And to be honest, I mean, if you've got the skill set to be an enabler, you can do it regardless of the experience, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, for sure, knowing how the sales process works is definitely going to be
Yeah.
advantageous.
Totally agree. My
Um,
job would be harder if I hadn't been in
yeah.
sales. That's not to say I had to have that experience to be in this
hmm
job, but it would be measurably harder.
So I guess people are looking for, if they're looking to employ enablers or enablement, it sounds like if it was going to be easier and easier to onboard, let's say, to get you ramped up faster, maybe that's something they look for. I don't know, something for us to potentially
Maybe,
consider.
maybe. I think it's difficult, right? And I think a lot of this
Mm,
conversations kind of stems back to this whole argument we're having at the moment. I say argument, discussion we're having in enablement about revenue impact and actually making
yeah,
that measurable and demonstrable. Enablement hasn't been very good at that historically. And I think that's where having the outright sales experience massively helps because you can go, well, I've done this, so therefore I can enable this. We know by
hmm
now that promoting managers or promoting sellers to managers because they smash their targets isn't necessarily the best way of doing things because that's promoting for performance, not for the skill set you need for a manager's role. In the same way, being a good seller doesn't naturally then make you a good sales enablement person. The
hmm
skill set's different, right? So it's not a given that that's the case, but I think our lack of um, maybe ability over the years to really demonstrate genuine impact and revenue means that maybe that was seen as almost like a alternative, maybe to be measured
yeah,
by.
yeah, yeah,
Now we are getting better at demonstrating impact and tracking the right things. Maybe it will become less important because it's going to be your track record as an enabler and what impact you've had that will get you that next role, will get you that promotion. Will there be a correlation between enablers with sales experience and enablers that don't? Maybe, but maybe we'll find that out over the next few years. So I think it's more
yeah. It's too
important
early to
now.
say.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, particularly in Europe, as we were saying, it's
Mm.
still a bit of a hidden gem. So going back to the methodologies, because I want to make sure we touch on this because
Mhm.
look, I mean, I do like your methodology. Do I like it to the point where I follow it religiously? No, because I don't. We're a medpic house here. We also use BANT for our qualification. Going back to your discovery piece, asking the same question and not tailored, asking, do you have a budget for this?
Mhm.
Have you got authority and stuff? It's gonna get samey, right? And
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer that all methodologies are really very similar, just labeled differently. Um,
Yes.
I know you said, they need context, right? Not worship, which a lot of organizations do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to quote myself here, which is a little bit
Oh, I
egotistical,
like it.
but
I like that though.
it's a stupid quote, by the way. It's not even anything that profound. But no, it was something that just one of these stupid things that came to me when I posted on LinkedIn, I think at some point last year, and it generated a lot of traction, which is sales methodologies are like early 90s indie bands. There's too many of them and they're all a bit rubbish. Um, you can age me from that comment, right? Um, but it's true, right? They're all quite
Yeah,
similar. They're all variations on a theme, and that's not to say they aren't worthwhile and they're not good. But it actually, to me, is similar to our conversation about AI. It's how you use them, not what they are themselves. If you go from having no
hmm
method to having a method, regardless of what that method is, the consistency it builds will drive success, whatever the method.
for sure.
So it's the consistency itself that's starting to get you results. Now, you then might be able to figure out which bits of that methodology are working well, which bits aren't, and then that can continue to kind of increase results. But as soon as you consistently do something that you weren't consistently doing before, you will understand whether it works or not. So that's not
Yeah.
the methodology itself, that's practice. So I think my issue, I call myself sometimes a methodology skeptic. And it's not that I don't believe in them and I don't think they're worthwhile. It's that I sort of don't care, which is a horrible thing to say in my line of work, right? If I was to align myself with one more closely, it probably would be MedPick. But I think there's things in Command of the Message that I really like. There's things in Challenger that I really
hmm
like. And it's because ultimately they're all talking about the same stuff. It is get to the bottom of what matters to the person you are talking to.
hmm
Find a gap in why they are not achieving that right now and figure out if what you are trying to sell them will help them close that gap. That's it. Those three things.
Yeah. You don't really need much
That's
more than that, let's be honest.
no,
Yeah.
and it's far easier said than done for me just to say, oh, it's just these three things, right? But these lists of questions, these qualification frameworks are just that. They are things
hmm
you can use in that conversation. I worked in a call center. I do not want to be scripted as a seller. It's horrible.
No.
When someone says something to
Yeah.
you and you've got to find the right bit to say. Um, to me, it moves us away from the art of conversation in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it it baffles me why this happens. There's got to be a psychology to this where as soon as we're talking to somebody on a cold call, for example, we forget how to talk to humans.
It's so true.
I used to do it.
Yeah.
I'm autistic. I have no idea how to talk to humans. But maybe that's why I drive into this kind of as an idea so much, because I've spent so long over the last 15 years figuring out what those patterns of behavior are and how people actually interact in these conversations, because I'm always looking for rules of interaction, right? But we forget that it's not
Mm-hmm.
question, answer. It's question, answer, response.
Mm-hmm.
And the response is the bit that gets missed. And I think our methodologies sometimes pushes too much to the question answer and they forget the response. I listen
Yeah.
to at least 10, 20 plus calls every single week. And the ones that are the best are the ones that ask the simplest questions, which is the first question might be something that is MedPIC related, for example. Then the prospect answers. And then the next question is the gold. It's the interesting. Why is that? Well, how come?
Mm-hmm.
Or I wasn't expecting you to say that. Can you tell me more? Things which you don't have to think about to ask, but get you below the surface level.
Yeah, you're
I don't
prizing
care.
open, aren't you? Going into it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can apply whatever methodology you want if you're not asking questions that get you below symptom and into cause. I couldn't care less if you know who the economic buyer is. Couldn't care less.
Yeah, it's so true. What's the point in knowing the economic buyer if you can't figure out the root
Yeah,
cause in the first place anyway?
exactly.
In the
And
beginning.
so methods have their purpose. And I think any training coaching I deliver at Leighton is framed by MedPIC in particular, but it's not the
Mm-hmm.
language at which that training or coaching is delivered.
Mm-hmm.
It's translated from the method into the practical because that's what people want.
I love it. It's a lens, not a religion. That's what I've got written
Yeah,
down
there
here.
you go. Absolutely.
Not that I'm trying to be scripted in any way. But
I've
no,
dropped
you're
three quotes
bang
in
on.
already, so you know.
Well, this is it, isn't it? Though it's about, and I can have a script. I'm just thinking back to my day to day. It's not necessarily a script in a traditional sense where you're simply reading it word for word, as a lot of
Mhm.
cold call scripts are, right?
Yeah,
It's more pointers just to make sure that you're going the right. I mean, we know we've got one for this kind of thing,
yeah,
right? You have pointers to kind of
exactly.
feed in the discussion, but the discussions are completely human,
Yeah.
right?
The only part of a cold call I think you can and probably should script is your intro, because
Yeah.
it is the bit that is unnatural by nature. You are literally interrupting somebody. As soon as you get them into a conversation, that's where it should start to become a little easier. But because
Hmm.
the beginning is so unnatural, it can be difficult, I think, for people to switch that tone almost back into just having a chat with somebody. And a lot of that is, I think, an imposter syndrome element as well, particularly for SDRs, where they're 21 years old, sat there in their first proper job, talking to a CFO, and you go, why the hell should they listen to me? And they might not be verbalizing these thoughts to us, but they're thinking them. They absolutely are.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's a lot of this kind of forgetting how to talk to people because they're almost intimidated by the people we're telling them to talk to. I think there's a
Oh, for
big piece in
sure. For sure.
humanizing our buyers to our sellers and vice versa,
Hmm.
um, which is a whole other topic, to be honest. But it's these things that I think methodologies forget.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm going back to when I was an SDR now, and we're probably knocking on almost 20 years ago, 15, 15 definitely, which again is showing the age on the call. Um, and I
We're
used to
just
have an
two disgusting
objection.
millennials, clearly.
I used to have an objection Bible, they used to call it,
Yeah,
right? And it was like this really thick document, and you'd be flicking through on a cold call trying to find the specific objection that this, sales
yeah.
director, sales lead, VP, whoever it was, has actually pulled out, to then read word for word what the objection said, and it's like you can almost hear the pages flicking on the
Yeah,
call. It's embarrassing
yeah.
to a sense.
It
But I
is,
was
but
there, been there.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes we need that stuff. And I think we can go
Yeah,
too far in the other direction sometimes, and people have no prompts, nothing. And
yeah.
some people can do that. But I think no matter how experienced you are as a seller at whatever part of the cycle, whether you're an SDR, an AE, whatever, Those prompts are useful at the beginning, because if you switch to a different role, everything is new. You might have your ways of doing things, but then you might find it doesn't work with that persona.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have those prompts, because there's so much knowledge that is trying to settle in your brain at the same time, and different parts will settle at a different rate. And if you can't
Mm-hmm.
bubble up that perfectly right bit of information at the right time, that's why you need the prompt.
Yeah, you're bang on.
It's
But you're
not.
right.
Yeah, it's not belittling. I think some people go, I don't need it. Yeah, you do. We all
Mm-hmm.
do. We all need prompts.
Yeah, got to accept it. That's half the battle. People actually not accepting
Yeah,
that they need that. But you're right. I mean,
yeah.
words matter more, in a sense, right? Because sales is and always has been a language game.
Mhm.
Um, and language is too often lazy and outdated. It can be, and I know you were talking about
Yeah.
this prior, the metaphors that we tend to use or sales teams tend to use, like war, sports, domination. It's not quite
No.
how we should be shaping
Oh, drives me
the
mad.
knowledge in there. So, yeah, the transform how to
Yeah.
do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've got better at those things. But yeah, it was those kind of analogies and the culture around sales that was kind of built through, my early years in the function made me feel really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
I think I succeeded in spite of the job I was in, kind of feeling like it was pushing me to the side in a way. That kind of very hyper masculine, male dominated sales world. I think for the most part, we've moved on, um, but it's still there. And I
Oh,
think
there's
for
definitely
for
still a little
me,
bit. Yeah.
oh, absolutely. I
You
see
see
it
it.
every day, to be
You do
fair.
see it. Yeah.
And I think for me in enablement, one of the things I always try and do is be inclusive, be accessible. Um,
Hmm.
Even if I don't think there's anyone in the room with me that applies to. Don't care. Um, it, there's I can't remember where this comes from, but we're throwing quotes about it again. Nothing you do to make your content, your training, or whatever it might be, more accessible for a minority will make it less accessible for the majority. And it's about picking those things that I think are a little bit more ubiquitous, or a little bit more, yeah, just inclusive. Without getting too on my high horse about it. I went through my twenties in sales, um, as this kind of. I was very very quiet outside of the role,
Hmm.
and it's because the team culture kind of made me that way. And some of this I look back now was undiagnosed autism, but it was also being a young bisexual person who hadn't got rid of
Yeah,
his
yeah.
stupid goth haircut that he had as a teenager and will never give up. Suddenly being thrust into this environment that just was so the opposite of me.
Yeah, yeah.
And even though I was doing well in the job, it made me feel like maybe it wasn't the job for me, not because I wasn't good at the job, because the environment felt like it was pushing me out.
Hmm.
And
I
I
was,
think we've got better,
hmm.
but I can sit here now, you know, very much pushing the wrong side of a number with a four in it. And that self-awareness, that kind of self-confidence that comes with growing up. Um, I can talk about this stuff now and call out these things now and make an active point of doing it. But I think when you're 23, 24, is it your place? You're worried about job security. You're not necessarily secure enough in yourself to have those conversations. Whatever it is that you're seeing. I remember one of my first proper sales jobs. My manager was phenomenal, and then she moved to manage a different team, and was replaced by a slightly more traditional male team manager. And within half an hour of coming in on his first day, it became clear the behaviour that having a female manager of an all-male team was diluting. Um, and I don't think they noticed.
Hmm.
But immediately I was like, okay, I'm out. And less than 6 months later, I wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, I
But
respect
that
that.
that was that was the catalyst for me. I was
Hmm.
already kind of at a point of thinking, there's not much else I can do at this company. Maybe I do need to move on. That was the final straw for me. And I think,
If you've got the right backgrounds, right? If you've got, it doesn't matter what, sorry, if you've got the right credentials of doing the job,
mhm,
who cares what the background is?
yeah,
Let's be
uh,
honest, right? I mean, that's the core of it.
yeah. But I think we're don't want to turn this into a D&I conversation or a
No,
recruitment
no,
conversation necessarily, but one of the things we see in sales is managers aren't trained to hire. And I think
no.
one of the reasons you've had those kind of frankly unhealthy cultures in the past and that must still exist today is they haven't been created deliberately. I don't
Hmm.
like to assume malice where it's actually just ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance deliberately. I mean, I just don't know. So because of this path we have of often people getting promoted to management because of performance, not because of managerial skill set, you then have a lack of managerial skill set, including hiring, which sees people essentially just hire replicas. They hire in their own image. They hire the person
Yeah,
they had a nice chat with, not the person that was best placed for the job. And none of that is deliberate until it's highlighted and trained and coached out with people. And that's where you
yeah.
end up getting these homogenous teams, not just in sales, this happens everywhere. Um, and I think one of the things I really like about enablement, to be honest, is how more markedly diverse enablement is as a community than sales is. Um, and this is kind of going backwards to another conversation, but maybe that whole do you need to have been in sales to be good at enablement conversation. One of the other
Mm.
layers to that is, do we want to replicate the problems that exist in sales in enablement? No, is my answer.
No,
Because from 5 years in enablement, I already know so many more people that aren't straight white men that work in enablement
yeah,
highly successfully. Um, were they in sales? I don't know them all individually, but they're all doing a great job. Were those people given opportunities in sales 10, 15 years ago at the start of their career? Maybe they wouldn't have been. So there's
yeah.
a whole other arc to that. And if enablement exists to make sales better at their job, then maybe we should be different.
Hmm. Well, it's like I said, inclusion isn't a side project, right? It's central to what you do. Central to
Yeah,
enablement. Has to
it
be.
is.
Because
Absolutely.
it isn't just sales. We spoke about this prior, and if that culture does exist in some sales teams, which I'm sure it does,
Mhm.
we're talking the Wolf from Wall Street culture here. Which yeah, the
Yeah,
old culture, the old suits and ties Wall Street bankers culture, right? Um, you've got to. It's not just sales enablement, and I think that's where it's revenue enablement. It's enablement across teams, and you do have to be inclusive. There has to be an inclusion in that, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say we have to go through listing all of these predicted characteristics of our team. It's not just about that. It's about that's important, but
Hmm.
I'm talking on the softer side of inclusion. And by that I mean personality types. I mean educational background. I mean just ensuring that everyone feels like they are included. Um,
Hmm.
you know, instead of let's say we have an onboarding cohort of 5 people, one of whom is really quiet in all of the sessions, doesn't say a word. The historic point there might have been to pinpoint them and go, "You've not said anything. What do you think?" Whereas the better option is
Hmm.
probably to pull them aside afterwards and go, "You've been quite quiet. Is everything okay? Are
Yeah.
you getting everything?" Because you don't know why. You don't know why.
Could be
Um,
anything. Yeah, it could
exactly.
be anything.
Yeah.
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 Been there. Been there. Been in environments before. I mean, we're going back a few years, but where you're thrown under the bus if you are quiet or you've not said anything for a while, or you're picked on because you haven't
Yeah.
answered a question in 10 minutes, right? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
A while back, mind, but I mean, I've seen it firsthand, and you've got no idea what's happened. No idea. Could be
Yeah.
anything. Personal, work
Literally
related,
anything.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's it's just important to do that.
Hmm. And look, diverse voices create a stronger, more empathetic sellers, really. I mean, that it creates a go-to-market function that's going to be more efficient, for sure,
Mhm.
based on what you're saying. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's shown
Absolutely.
up in where you work, or at least where you've worked before. And what I guess, for a bit of advice to the enablement leaders listening, because it's majority enablement people that listen to these kind of podcasts. What can they do in your eye to kind of start improving to encompass all of this?
Wow. That's a big question.
It is a
Um,
big question. I thought I'd throw you in right at the end to really kind of.
so there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first of which is something I don't see enough enablement teams doing. And perhaps this comes from the fact that I got started in enablement at a recruitment business,
Hmm.
having been a sales and account manager at that company. But I don't think enablement is close enough to hiring strategy, hiring process when it comes to sellers. I hear very rarely enablement get involved in that process. I'm not actively involved in it at Leighton, and says, I'm not interviewing, I'm not making those decisions. However, I am in pretty constant contact and feedback loops with talent acquisition. Because if we talk about hiring for coachability, who's the first coach they're going to get? If you're going into sales onboarding, it's me and their manager, obviously. But getting close to what are we looking for and why? Is this appearing in my onboarding cohorts? Can I join the dots between the hiring strategy and who appears in front of me every month? Because if I can't, I'm in a unique position to be able to feed that back. So in terms of whether it's inclusivity or diversity, whatever it might be, that's the first point of call for me. Is creating those feedback loops and working closely with talent acquisition so that if there are gaps, we know about them, and they know who's succeeding. My onboarding program, I measure time to success. So I'm not just looking for your first booking, your first contract. I want to know your second, your fifth, your 10th. So success to consistency. And talent acquisition now get that data too. So it's not just about did that person
your role.
It's huge.
It is.
It's not just for them. It's not just about they have retention targets, obviously, and attrition targets and things like that. So where in other businesses you might find their focus is on did they pass probation. They know 3 months out if someone's going to probably pass probation because that data is visible and it's something we're tracking. So that feedback loop is really important. For outside of onboarding, I think it's simply everything we've spoken about. It's creating that idea of making things accessible, making things inclusive, which is such a broad term and it's different for absolutely everything. But frankly, get to know the people you're enabling. I spend more time with our SDR team than I do with anybody else, but that's starting to change. But I know them as well as I need to. I'm not their best friend or anything. I'm 20 years older than half of them. Not that should matter, but you know what I mean. It's understanding. Like managers should be able to talk about what is that person interested in? What are their development goals? What drives them? I want to know that too, because I can't include someone if I don't know what their real focus is. So there's a whole load of different things you can do there, but that's probably the two things that came to mind instantly.
It's a great point you finish on. One of the talks we were at the National Sales Conference last week, they were talking about, do you know your team's 5 most important whys? Or the reasons they get out of bed, for example, right? And the majority of people were saying they could probably only tell you one. And some of them wouldn't even know that, or any of them. Everyone assumes it's money, right? Everyone assumes that in sales, going back to the cultural thing. And
actually often isn't. It's what the money enables them to do that's actually important. That's the thing. But do you have to know what those whys are? Maybe not. Some of that's quite personal. They don't have to share it. But I run a session I keep going back to onboarding, but it takes up a lot of my time. There's a session I run in that about resilience and how it's so much easier to take the bad days if you've got a goal you're actually, driving towards, how close you are and how much work you need to do there. And I say to them in that session, like, you don't have to tell me what that is. Because it could be really personal. You can share it. You don't have to. As long as I know you've got that, everything I say to you from now on is going to help you get there. So you don't have to have that personal information. Not everyone's going to be that comfortable, giving that to you necessarily. But just getting out in the open that you probably should. And if you haven't thought of something, then try. Because it can be small. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be, my car's falling apart, I want to replace it. That'll drive you for a month before you can get a new one. It can be small, short-term things. It doesn't have to be these crazy life goals that social media tells you have to have.
Yeah, great place to finish on, and I think you've wrapped up really nicely there. Ignore social media because it is poisonous, completely poisonous.
Unless it's LinkedIn, obviously, which I'm unhealthily obsessed with.
Unless it's LinkedIn. Which is how we're going to find you, right, Dave? We're going to find you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So you've got, I'm going to get the team to put up your name in lights for sure. Dave Sweeney on LinkedIn, working at Leighton, but obviously the Enablement Squad as well. If you want to give the Enablement Squad a shout out, please do while we're here.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard of us, we are mainly a Slack-based community. There's plenty out there. The unique thing for me about the Enablement Squad is we're run by volunteers. Everything we do is free. and we have an event and content program every year, some in-person stuff, some virtual stuff. We are well over 4,000 members, pushing to 5 at the moment. And I know I'm biased here, but the reason I am in the enablement squad and have been now since basically the beginning of my enablement career is you go onto that Slack channel and you ask a question. You're looking for help with something. The most, let's say, useful, actionable responses I ever got at the beginning of my career in enablement were from people in the enablement squad. I think just there's lots of people who are in smaller teams. We have people from bigger teams as well, but I think some of the other communities are driven by some of those, bigger, more established teams. And as much as their advice is welcomed, it's not always practical for a team of 1, team of 2, team of 3. And that's what I love about the enablement squad is everything you get is practical. And it's just a really helpful bunch, to be honest. So yeah, come find us. Go to our website. You can get the link to join the Slack channel there. Monthly webinars. We've got a couple of virtual kind of workshop hackathon style things coming up, hopefully, which we haven't confirmed yet. So I might not have to say any more on that. And then we've got 2 in-person events coming up later on in the year, one in New York and one in London, which I will be hosting.
Not the New York one. Are you off to New York?
Unfortunately not. I wish. No, we'll be in London. I'm not going to say the date because I can't remember it, but mid to late September.
Yeah, hopefully it's not when I'd like to be there myself. I'm in the US in September. Hopefully the dates do cross over because these events, people should definitely be joining them. They should be visiting on Slack because I don't know if I'm on your Slack channel. I absolutely should be. Because like you said, it's the knowledge piece that you can get quickly and you're learning from other enablers, right? Which is the best thing that you can ask for. So
absolutely, it's a cliche, but they're a helpful bunch.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dave. This has been superb, and we've touched on again so many different topics that hopefully people will, and they most certainly will, get some. Even if you take one thing away from any of these podcasts, then I think we're happy with that, aren't we? But yeah, thank you, Dave. It's been wonderful, and
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Enablement Uncanned. Here we go. Thanks everyone for listening. Appreciate it.